So just stepped into the F-Pace. Obviously it's in the same family as the Range Rover Velar, but how does it compare? Now on first impressions, the inside isn't quite as plush, and this is a cheaper car, but not by much. This model tested is just under 65,000, so it's only £2,000 cheaper. But the inside isn't quite as nice. It's still a nice place to be, don't get me wrong. So you've got leather on the dashboard, but it feels harder and it's not as plush as the Range Rover. You've got leather on the door panels as well, but there's a bit more harder plastics in this one. Anyway, let's start the engine. So stop start button's down here. So like my last few videos, I'm afraid the exterior footage has been lost, but that's a rather long story. So here are some lovely clips direct from Jaguar Land Rover. Now those eagle-eyed amongst you will be able to spot that this F-Pace is blue, quite obviously, and it's also an S model, plus the scenery is a far cry from Weatherby, which is where I tested the car. Also, there are brownie points for anyone who can guess the official name of that shade of blue. Now it's worth noting that the Jaguar F-Pace R Sport model would normally start at just over £37,000, so it's safe to say a lot of options have been added to this model tested. Standard features include the R Sport body styling, dual exhausts, bi-xenon headlights, 19-inch alloys, leather sport seats and navigation, to name but a few. Optional extras include front and rear privacy glass, 20-inch alloys, 10-inch dual view touchscreen, gloss black grille, adaptive dynamics pack and the Firenze red paintwork, as well as plenty more. So there's still a fair amount of technology in here, but not quite as much as the Velar. This is also an automatic model, but this has got a petrol engine. So it's got 250 PS, which is around 245 brake horsepower, give or take. Also got this lovely panoramic roof. That's very nice. I know it's not linked to the engine, it's not really related, but just thought I'd mention it. So let me give you the specs. So again, this is a quick drive. So 2 litre turbocharged petrol, 250 PS as I've already mentioned. It has, how much torque has it got? It's got 365 newton meters of torque, mated to an 8-speed automatic. 0 to 60, 6.4 seconds, and the top speed is 135. So the stats are around the same as the diesel Velar I drove a few moments ago. But what's it like to drive? Well, let's find out. Pop it into D, and away we go. Now this is a sportier model, so the steering does feel heavier. Yeah, don't want to run anyone down. So I don't feel like I'm sat as high as I was in the Range Rover. But of course it's an SUV, so the driving position is still nice and commanding. But I do like the steering weight. That is quite nice. Now I do like the steering to be quite heavy in a car. And so far, the Jaguar is doing well on that front. Or the Jag. And it's very familiar in here. So just having stepped out of the Range Rover and into the F-Pace, a lot of the controls are very similar, as you would expect. Are they as premium? No, if I'm going to be completely honest, but it's still a nice place to be. Oh yes. Now if you want luxury, then the Range Rover is the better option, but this, if you want a sportier option, I think I'd take this. Also, I would argue this is a better looking car. I think the F-Pace is one of the best looking SUVs money can buy at the moment. And it's one of those cars where I think it looks good in almost any colour. It's a fantastic looking car. It's a real beauty. Now at this point you may be asking, well, what about the Range Rover Sport? And you'd have a valid question, but the base model will cost you almost £25,000 more than a standard F-Pace R Sport model, so it's something to bear in mind. Right, let's see what this automatic gearbox is like. It's got the same auto as the Range Rover, of course, so the characteristics should be the same. So pop it into sport mode, like so. Again, a little bit of lag to get going, but yeah, it will get a move on. Yeah, that's pretty quick through there. That is pretty quick. Right, let's take control of the paddles. So into third, into fourth. Again, the changes are pretty crisp, they're pretty sharp. Being inside here, it does feel a little noisier than the Range Rover. It's not quite as refined, but it's still not exactly what you'd call noisy. But I do feel like I'm having to talk a little bit louder in this car compared to the Range Rover. But what is the gearbox like when you just leave it to its own devices? Well, let's find out. So, natural speed limit. Okay, foot down, nothing. There we go. Not too bad, pretty responsive. A little bit slow to pick up. So, this has been a very successful car for Jaguar. It's had the lion's share in regards to sales, and it's won car of the year. It's won quite a few awards, in fact. And it outlives with Velar, and it's a nice car to drive. It's got a different kind of aim, a different kind of setup as opposed to the Velar. The Velar is more wafty and luxury and premium, whereas this is a more sportier setup. But that's not to say it feels cheap in here, because it doesn't. It's not as luxurious, but it doesn't feel like I'm sat in a bin bag, let's put it that way. This definitely feels more dynamic. This, of course, has got driving modes as well. Just trying to see how to access them. So dynamic, what have we got? We've got dynamic, normal, eco, ADSR. That is an all-weather one, I believe. But let's pop it back into dynamic. There we go. Good place to be. This feels like, well, this feels more of a driver's car, whereas the Velar is a car to be driven in, if that makes sense. But I do like this. I just want to open up the tap, so I want to get a bit of open tarmac, so I can let the F-Pace loose. I can put it through its paces. You like what? Never mind. Right, so let's see how fast this car is. Almost at stop. Pop it into first gear, right foot down. Woo-hoo. Into second, into third, and that's 60. Not bad. Not too bad at all for an SUV. The grip this car is able to offer, it's pretty amazing. This is an SUV that you really enjoy throwing in the bends. Well, I do anyway. And although this is a sportier model, the ride is still pretty good. It's not as smooth and as wafty as the Velar, but it's not uncomfortable. Right, okay. Got a few bends coming up. Let's see what this car can do. See how it handles. Oh, that's impressive. Oh, good level of grip. Not too much body roll either, which is impressive for a car as big as this. Steering's got a nice feel to it. Thumbs up from me. Oh yes. Brakes have got a good stopping power. The brake pedal has got a good amount of feel to it as well. If you want a decent sporty SUV, this is definitely worth looking at. Now, the 2 litre petrol is far from a slouch, but if you fancy more power, you can opt for either a turbocharged V6 diesel or a turbocharged V6 petrol, which offer respective power figures of 297 brake horsepower and 375 brake horsepower. But if economy is what you're after, then have a look at the 161 brake horsepower 2 litre turbocharged diesel, which can offer up to 59.2 miles per gallon on a combined run. But what I like is that if the mood takes you and you want to give this car a blast, you can. Whereas in the Velar, it will get a move on, but it doesn't quite seem right. It's a car, it doesn't feel like it wants to be hurried. Whereas this is a different animal altogether. You get a sense that this is quite happy to be driven briskly, whereas the Velar, it rather you didn't. It's not to say that it can't, but it's not really what it's best at. But the F-Pace has no such problems. So we are now returning back to base. So, time to give you my final thoughts for Range Rover? Jaguar F-Pace. Got a little bit confused then. Yes, for Jaguar F-Pace. Is it as premium as a Velar? No, it isn't, and I think you probably predicted that. But yet, from a driver's point of view, I'd rather have this because it's more dynamic, it's just simply more fun. It really is. So for that reason alone, I would probably opt for the F-Pace, but I know other people prefer the luxury and the premium level of a Range Rover, but for me, I'd have the F-Pace, please. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up, and please subscribe for more car obsession.